devices be silenced. Announcements for today: we need to be out of the room by 4, which suggests we need to finish at 3:30 latest this afternoon. We've also been advised that the road outside will be closed from 4:30, just in case anyone has a vehicle with them today. So our programme for today is to hear Mr. Welsh's evidence. Mr. Steele, did you manage to magic up any additional witnesses overnight, or are we restricted to Mr. Welsh today?
I regret, sir, we were unsuccessful. We've tried very hard, and the best I think we achieved is somebody arriving at Edinburgh Airport, I think I said yesterday at 1:30 or 2 o'clock, and I don't see how it would be practical to rely on that. No doubt the flight will be late and there'll be an hour getting here, and so on and so forth.
And we need to finish at 3:30.
And we need to finish it.
Yeah.
Does that mean we also need to take papers out?
It does. Yes, we need to clear the room today. I'm not sure about rooms that others have booked, but this room needs to be cleared tonight.
Okay, I hadn't realised that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, any other things that we need to discuss? No? Okay, Mr. Innes.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Welsh. You have a precognition, and it's a relatively brief, and I would ask you just to read that, and I have a number of supplementary matters arising from evidence that's been led at the inquiry.
Good morning. I am James Welch, a Chartered Landscape Architect and Director of Optimised Environments Limited, OPEN, a firm of landscape architects and environmental planners based in Edinburgh. Details of my relevant experience are set out in Annex 1 to my Townscape, Landscape and Visual Inquiry Report, which is RHSPT3. My evidence forms part of the Royal High School Preservation Trust's objection to the proposed redevelopment of the former Royal High School into a world-class hotel of international standing, and specifically addresses landscape, townscape and visual matters relating to the two applications, Scheme 1 and Scheme 2, that are before the reporters in this appeal. My separate inquiry report addresses the matters set out in the RHSPT's outlined statement of case and inquiry statement. OPEN was first engaged by the Trust in autumn 2015 to provide landscape architectural advice in respect of its applications to the City of Edinburgh Council to convert the former Royal High School into a new home for St Mary's Music School. The Trust's applications were approved by CEC in, technically it was August 2017. As a consequence of my company's involvement with the Trust over the past 3 years, I have some good knowledge of the site and surroundings. I reviewed the appellant's Scheme 1 proposals from an L&V, that's landscape and visual standpoint, for the Trust in 2016, prior to the appeal for that scheme being sisted. I also attended the accompanied site inspection with the reporters on 10th of May 2018, and this further expanded my appreciation of the site, as I had not been onto the former school grounds previously, although a very good appreciation can be gained from publicly accessible areas around it. Assessment. The evidence I present in my inquiry report focuses on the landscape, townscape and visual effects of the two schemes that the appellant has prepared for the former Royal High School site. My report concentrates on the effects of Scheme 2, as it has been produced by the appellant to mitigate some of the concerns expressed in response to Scheme 1. My report reviews the appellant's townscape and visual impact assessment and supporting visualisations for Scheme 2 contained within Volume 15, Appendices L and M of the February 2017 ES, along with the more recent visualisations prepared by MVGLA, and draws conclusions on the likely magnitude and significance of effects that have been identified. I have undertaken a focused assessment of each of the relevant receptors and have critically reviewed the appellant's assessment. In doing so, I have applied the appellant's methodology used within its TVIA, together with my own experience in reaching a reasoned professional opinion on the extent and nature of the likely effects. I have considered the likely effects of the proposed developments both in relation to landscape, townscape receptors, including landscape character and designations, and separately on visual receptors and visual amenity. I also comment on the likely effects on the setting of key assets, but only insofar as visual effects on the asset in question are concerned. It is for others' evidence to the inquiry to complete the picture for the reporters and enable them to reach conclusions on the overall impact on the cultural significance, integrity and setting of each asset. The site for the proposed developments occupies the grounds and buildings of the former Royal High School on Regent Road, Edinburgh, which closed to use as a school in 1968. The Hamilton building is the centrepiece on the site, and the other buildings comprising the gymnasium, classroom block and refectory are subservient to it. The gate lodge is modest, but nonetheless a prominent feature on the approach from Waterloo Place. The walls and railings around the perimeter of the site provide a clear boundary definition. I am aware from the evidence submitted by Historic Environment Scotland that the Hamilton building is of international importance and significance. I also understand from the HES evidence that the siting of the school on Carlton Hill is not incidental, but has been carefully planned to form a striking composition with the other monuments on the hill. That composition helps to define the visual setting of the Hamilton building and is something that I can appreciate in landscape and visual terms. Together, it produces one of the most significant and memorable compositions in a city anywhere, and this underpins the World Heritage Site status and other designations bestowed on it. All current proposals for the RHS site require the demolition of most of the ancillary buildings on the site. In the appellant's proposals, all buildings other than the Hamilton building, the associated pavilions and the Belvedere Tower will be removed. The appellant's development proposals will connect two large modern hotel wings to the Hamilton building in slightly different locations. In doing so, the proposed development will fundamentally alter the existing appearance of and the immediate visual setting to the Hamilton building. This will also directly and adversely affect how it is perceived in relation to several important designations and views pertaining to the site and this part of the city. I consider the implications of this in landscape and visual terms in my inquiry report and find significant landscape and visual effects will arise in relation to the 6 townscape receptors I have assessed, including the World Heritage Site, Newtown Gardens Garden and Designed Landscape, Newtown and Old Town Conservation Areas, and Carlton Hill Special Landscape Area, as well as at 14 representative viewpoints. These views will arise principally from the south and west of the site, looking towards the Hamilton building and Carlton Hill. Having regard to the importance of the landscape and visual setting of the Royal High School on Carlton Hill, I consider that the appellant's LVIAs have under-assessed the sensitivity, magnitude and significance of the effects that the proposed developments will cause. I consider that this shortcoming indicates a lack of proper understanding of the landscape of Carlton Hill and its critical relationship to the RHS and the monuments on it. In many views, the development will increase the perception that the southern fringes of the hill have been entirely built upon, and this will reduce the extent of visibility of the component parts of the hill itself. This has the effect of altering the relationship of the Royal High School with Carlton Hill, and also has the effect of reducing the perception of the hill form itself by developing an apparently continuous band of buildings across its lower slopes. This in turn undermines the monuments that are positioned on top of the hill. In contrast, the Royal High School Preservation Trust proposals will have the opposite effect, making more of the hillside visible through removal of the gymnasium block. My inquiry report also sets out my concerns about the lack of adequate visualisation material provided to properly show the framing effect of the proposed hotel wings in close-range views from Regent Road, including from immediately outside the main entrance to the Hamilton building, from where they will have the potential to visually dominate it. The reporters have no visual information to inform their assessment from this location. In my opinion, the appearance of the hotel wings will serve to bookend the Hamilton building in close-range views and diminish its prominence as an individual and iconic building in the landscape. This will compromise its visual setting, particularly in views from the south. The Trust's proposals will also change parts of the visual setting of the Hamilton building and significantly change the existing views of the gymnasium and refectory from limited parts of Regent Road, Regent Terrace, from where they will reduce the verticality of the gymnasium and rise above the existing refectory wall along the south-east boundary. It is also the case that the octagonal glass roof light will be glimpsed in association with the Hamilton building from Regent Road, and parts of the new school would be seen from Carlton Hill Drive looking south. I consider that any townscape and visual effects arising as a result will be much more modest in nature and will not affect the appearance of or the external fabric of the Hamilton building to the same extent as the appeal proposals would, particularly from Regent Road and Carlton Hill Drive. Conclusions. Through my review of the likely effects of the proposed development on the relevant townscape, landscape and visual resource, I am clear that the former Royal High School presents some of the most highly valued townscape within the UK. The site and its surroundings are protected by a raft of designations that afford it recognition at both the national and international level. Within these designations, Carlton Hill and indeed the RHS site are singled out for the contribution they make to the special qualities and characteristics that underpin these designations. The relationship between the Hamilton building and Carlton Hill is both designed and iconic. The World Heritage Site Management Plan highlights the integral role Carlton Hill and its associated monuments has to play in the outstanding universal value of the WHS. Although it forms only a small proportion on the eastern edge of the wider WHS, it is considered to make a critical contribution to the value and integrity of the wider WHS. The Hamilton building is cited as an integral part of this. The value of the WHS designation is undoubtedly of the highest order, in my opinion. This has been underrepresented in the appellant's TVIA. I am also in no doubt that the site is highly sensitive to change, and my assessment of the likely effects has been undertaken on that basis. My approach to the assessment of the likely effects is not substantially different to that used by the appellant's landscape architects. In some cases, we agree on the instances, locations where significant effects will arise, but there are more areas where we disagree. I have identified what I consider to be errors in the application of the methodology used by the appellant related to the assignment of value as a key component of sensitivity, where the World Heritage Site is not correctly accounted for. I consider that the appellant's visual impact assessment understates sensitivity and magnitude of impacts, and therefore the significance of effects. The appellant's approach identifies no significant effects on the World Heritage Site, Newtown Conservation Area, Old Town Conservation Area, setting of, or of the Newtown Gardens garden and designed landscape, apparently on the basis that because only a small part of the overall designation is affected, this cannot be significant for the whole. Such an approach is almost always likely to conclude no significant effects from changes that have small geographical impacts, but it ignores the fact that an effect on one or more of the key qualities or characteristics that underpin the integrity of the designation can be significant in their own right, particularly where that impact affects a component that lies at the heart of the designation, as is the case with the former Royal High School and Carlton Hill. I comprehensively disagree with this approach. On the basis of the evidence that I've set out in my inquiry report, I consider that the proposed development would impact adversely, to a significant degree, the visual setting and qualities of the Hamilton building and its relationship to Carlton Hill, thereby adversely impacting the internationally important World Heritage Site, as well as the other landscape, townscape and visual receptors I have considered.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. Could we now move on to matters that have arisen? In the first instance, could you have a copy of your inquiry report available, which I think is document RHSPT3, please?
I have that.
Now, insofar as you say you've adopted the methodology produced on behalf of the appellants, is there a matter in your inquiry report which is an error?
Yes, there is.
Would you like to go to that and point it out, please?
Sir, if you could turn to paragraph 87 in my inquiry report. and the last sentence on that page says the use of a matrix as a starting point reflects Open's approach to. For the avoidance of doubt, I consider that impacts of a medium magnitude, that should read low magnitude, on a high sensitivity receptor are significant.
And in terms of the methodology applied by the appellants, what does it apply in that context?
It identifies that a magnitude of impact that is low on a high sensitivity receptor produces a medium magnitude effect that is significant.
And where would we find that, Mr. Welsh?
That can be found in their TVIA document. I have CD 178 and 179.
I think it might be visual methodologies 178, is that correct?
Yes.
And if we go to page M7, there's a table M1.3.
That's correct.
And is that the reference point that you wish to make?
It is.
Thank you. Why have you adopted the appellant's methodology, Mr. Welsh?
The principal reason I adopted it was to ensure that the reporters could have a like-for-like comparison of effects. I could have used our own methodology, but that may have made such a comparison more difficult.
Thank you. Now, we're going to come on, and if we could keep document 3 available, you will need document 596, which is Mr. Van Grieken's visualizations. So, first of all, if you could go to paragraph 110 of your inquiry report, please. And before asking you a question, because we're going to just discuss 2 viewpoints that arose in evidence. We're not going through the whole matter again, Mr. Welsh. You'll be pleased to hear. But what experience do you have of undertaking TVIA work in this World Heritage Site?
My practice has been involved in the preparation of TVIA for 5 developments in the World Heritage Site. 2 of those were taken while we were part of another company, but they are Quarter Mile, Carlton Gate, the Royal High School, Donaldson School redevelopment, and the Impact Concert Hall.
And I could turn to look first of all at viewpoint 1, which is the castle ramparts. And just to give you the context, Mr. Van Grieken gave evidence on this matter and was, I think best, highly surprised that you could find a significant effect at this viewpoint. And I just want to understand the reason and rationale for you reaching a different view on viewpoint 1, please, having regard to what you've set out in your inquiry statement, please.
In reaching that conclusion, I have applied the appellant's methodology. That methodology provides an objective framework, i.e. the matrix we just looked at, and also provision of professional judgment, which is perfectly normal in carrying out LVIA. The key question in relation to the castle is whether a minor or small magnitude of change can be considered significant on a high-value receptor. The methodology on the face of it says it can be significant because it sits firmly within the shaded area in the matrix. So taking that as an objective starting point and visiting the location on more than one occasion, I have evaluated what I consider the magnitude to be. I believe it is a minor element in the view, but it is also an important change, and that change requires to be weighed up in the context of what is probably the highest sensitivity receptor we are likely to find in undertaking an assessment of this type, i.e. the castle, which is subject to the greatest number of visitors across Scotland. Carlton Hill is a focal part of the view. Your eye is naturally drawn to it because of the profile of the hill. The individual buildings on it can be readily discerned. You can discern people walking around on it. And the Royal High School is clearly discernible as an individual building set on the vegetated slopes of Carlton Hill, which continues to roll past it down into the Cowgate. In my view, although small, the proposed development will remove that apparent connection from Carlton Hill to the Cowgate and diminish the prominence of the Royal High School building as an individual building on the hill slopes. And it will produce a continuous band of development stretching along the foot of Carlton Hill. Given the sensitivity, in my view, a precautionary approach should be adopted that follows the methodology and applies a significant effect in this instance, albeit it is of a minor magnitude.
And I want you to move forward into viewpoint 3C, just following on in the sense of getting closer in the view from the southwest. And in this context, you use slightly different language and you add in further issues that you identify as being relevant to the consideration of the magnitude of change and thereby the significance of the effect. And I just want, again, by reference to probably if we could look at 3A03, because we've got the 215 and the 217 schemes both available at that point. If you could just explain by reference, I think your assessments on the scheme 2, but by reference to that viewpoint, the reasons for your findings in that respect.
Could you just repeat the figure number?
I think it's 2018 3A03, because in that one we get both the 2015 and the 2017 schemes in. And then if you want to look at 2017 alone, it's 05, two images further beyond.
Yes, well, if you start with the baseline view, it is really an amplification of the point I was making at the castle. You see the profile of Carlton Hill extending down into the Cowgate. You get a clearer impression of the Royal High School as a monument partway down that slope, and that relationship with the hill and its individual prominence would change when you apply, if we go to the 2017 proposals, in figure 05 in that run, it diminishes the prominence of the Royal High School in its own right. And I consider that is one step up in terms of magnitude, resulting in a significant visual effect from the North Bridge. There are also aspects of this particular montage that concern me, such as the interruption to the simple profile of the Royal High School roof. which I understand is as a result of lift shafts on the eastern wing. And you can see them projecting somewhat incongruously above that simple roofline. But I'm in no doubt that that is a significant visual impact from this viewpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. Just one point, another point that's been raised during the inquiry is the issue of duration and reversibility. And I was just understanding your approach to those aspects in consideration of these proposals, please, Mr. Welsh.
In relation to some forms of development, an appreciation of reversibility can reduce the magnitude of impact in an assessment. In this case, I approach recommended by GLVIA 3 in paragraph 5.52 and considered the development to be permanent. And by that, the GLVIA refers to a generation or 25 years, and I consider that this development is likely to be in situ for more than 25 years. (5.52)
CD 542.
Yes.
Paragraph 551 and 5.52. Is that the references you want to make?
Yes.
Now, moving on, I want to ask you if you could have CD 180 available, which is the second tranche of visualizations relating to Scheme 2. Could I ask you, first of all, to look at viewpoint 21A, which is figure 13.75 and 13.76. Now, I just want your views on the accuracy of the photomontage, please, Mr. Walsh.
This issue that I've identified with this particular visualization is possibly best appreciated using digital versions of the images, because you can toggle between the before and after, which makes it very apparent. But in essence, the pavilion of the Royal High School increases in size between the before and after views. It changes in width and position, and perhaps one of the easiest ways of noting on a hard copy is that you can note that the westernmost wall of the pavilion shifts to the left in the visualization by about 3 millimeters. It also shifts to the right to the extent that it conceals part of the gateway through the wall. So I'm concerned that this is not an accurate visualization.
Oh, I mean, is this just nitpicking, Mr. Welch?
Not in terms of how I would have approached an issue of this importance. Visualizations are critically important to an assessment of this type. This is not a design and access statement. This is a technical document that is intended to provide confidence to decision makers and provide them with an accurate impression of a proposed development.
And does Viewpoint 21A provide that?
Certainly the photo montage has adapted or adjusted the baseline, and from that point of view, I cannot have confidence that it is accurate.
Thank you. Can we look at 21A, please? And that's...
that was 21A.
Sorry, 27A, 1391 and 1392.
There are a number of oddities with the photo montage, and again, this is best appreciated by toggling on screen between the before and after. But, for example, the road cone on the left-hand side, the beacon, is shorter in the montage. The existing gates to Carlton Hill Drive move forward in the montage by a small amount, but a noticeable amount if you view it on screen. And rather crudely, but the gate, the railing pier on the right-hand side is taller in the montage than it is in the baseline view. And very simply, you can take a line from the top of Arthur's Seat down to it and see that there's a different inclination there. It's also clear to me from the demolition plan that those railings onto Carlton Hill Drive are not intended for removal or relocation.
And can we also see, Mr. de Welch, that in relation to I think you identified that one of the traffic infrastructure had been reduced in height. Do we also see that on its western face in the photomontage it appears to have numbers which have been removed in the photomontage?
Yes.
Now, taken collectively, what does this give you the impression of, Mr. Welch?
Well, these aren't the only two views that this type of issue arises in connection with. There are others, and it does not give me confidence that these portray an accurate reflection of the proposed development. We can have no confidence that they are entirely accurate. They may be useful as artists' impressions, but that's not what the purpose of this document should seek to do.
And if we go to 21D, what's the 1381 and 1382?
Sorry, what were these numbers, please?
1381 and 1382, 21D.
I think actually if you start at 21B, the problem arises firstly there. Again, toggling on a computer, the bus jumps in height in the montage, and the road that it's on also increases materially in height, which is confusing.
I don't have a bus in that. I'm confused.
21B,
In 21B.
1377. There's a bus in the
distance.
Just beyond the white bus.
Sir, I also wonder whether these particular points about these particular images were put to Mr Van Grieken. I don't remember that they were put to him, and it may be he would have had an explanation. And frankly, I'm finding this difficult to follow. I think I see a bus. I'm not sure. But I don't recollect this line at all. I certainly recollect about the pavilion, but not about this.
I do recall some of this being taken with Mr Van Grieken. I think you're probably right. I think we're hearing more than we did at that stage. So I'm a little nervous about this, Mr Innes.
Yeah, we have foreshadowed in our objections problems with photomontages 27, and we've also flagged up 21. And all I'm highlighting is, Mr Welsh, I've only got this, he's only got this one, this is the last of it, of this 21, and there isn't any more I'm going to. I'm not going back to the roof being off the other one. That's there, it's in evidence, we've got that. I'm not repeating, I'm just completing Mr Welsh's commentary on 21.
Okay, if we're on the last
example
on the last, of this,
yeah,
that's fine.
Mr Welsh, just if you could just complete the bus issue.
On 21B, the bus and the roadway jumps up in height in the montage view, again drawing questions about the accuracy of the placement of the development proposals. And in 21C, that same railing pier is taller in the montaged view.
Now, on to the final element of examination in chief. You may not have been here throughout this inquiry, Mr Welch, but shall we say very specific issues regarding the setting of very specific parts of the site have come into question and been discussed. And I appreciate that that's a matter that's largely evolved during the evidence at the inquiry. So I want to just get your views on a number of those particular matters, because they appear to have been broken down into very specific constituent parts. So I think it's probably easier if I keep to the tradition of breaking this down into very small parts. And we're going to talk first of all about the southern boundary wall of the eastern playground. And I think in terms of visualization, to understand that, I mean, we can go to any of the sections, and I think that as an inquiry we've been through those sections to ad nauseam in terms of essentially it's a southern boundary for the trust site that has effectively the accommodation block window sticking on top of the southern boundary, and it extends round a bit to the east. What I was wondering is your view on the visual and landscape aspects of setting vis-à-vis the trust proposal relative to the to that particular aspect of the appeal proposals when viewed from outside the appeal site to the south. And I was thinking of viewpoints 35 and 18 of Scheme 2 and probably CD 684 in relation to the trust scheme. But I'm just wanting your understanding or view as to the setting of that southern boundary wall relative to the differing schemes, please, Mr Welch.
If we start with the Trust's proposal, CD 684 is probably the most helpful one to refer to. And the existing view reveals that you can, in winter, see the wall, see the railing on top of it, parts of the refectory and gymnasium beyond, with a glimpse of Carlton Hill. The proposed development would involve development up to the inside of that wall with windows projecting above. And this would certainly change the visual setting of that wall. I don't believe it is a significant change, but when we compare the before and after, one of the most notable things that jumps out at you is that you regain a view of the profile of Carlton Hill with the removal of the gymnasium. So in balancing those matters up, I think that the Trust's proposals offer an improvement to that boundary of the site and that wall.
And if you could keep going and comment on the...
Turning to the current appeal proposals, if you go to CD 180 and viewpoint 35, you again there can see the gymnasium being removed behind the wall, railings retained, and the east wing of the development in the photo montage projecting appreciably above the current height of the gymnasium, and I have identified that to be a significant adverse effect in viewpoint 35. You could also take in viewpoint 18C, and I would make the same point there, that the visual setting of the wall becomes dominated by the east wing of the hotel development. Now, in a straightforward comparison between the two, I consider the Trust's proposals are advantageous.
Now, keeping to outside the site and views of the site at this stage, could we now turn, because I wouldn't want to leave the little bit of eastern boundary wall out of account if we're talking about setting of walls, Mr. Welch. We don't really have a visualisation, but we have two sections which are probably of assistance, CD 716 and CD 253. This would effectively be in views from the east, which I think you've been to one example, which is the rear garden ground of 1 Regent Terrace. So it is an area which you've been to and given consideration to.
The uppermost elevation in CD 716 shows the eastern boundary wall, and we can see there in part, along part of its length, the glazing continues to appear above the wall with railings above, marking the edge of the playground, before stepping up to retain the existing wall where it overlooks the garden of number 1 Regent Terrace, and we can see the Belvedere on the right. I consider that that produces a very respectful visual relationship with the wall. There would be an impact along that boundary, but generally it's a very of a low order of magnitude. And of course, from below the wall, in the garden of number 1, you won't see the majority of the school buildings that are evident in the cross section, in the elevation beyond.
I think you were going to go to CD 253.
CD 253 also shows the eastern elevation of the wall as per the appeal proposals, with the hotel, east wing of the hotel lying beyond, and bearing in mind that the hotel is very close to the wall at that point, I consider that the visual impact, and I have discussed this in my inquiry report, the visual impact from number 1 would be significant from this direction.
Now, keeping with ongoing with views from outside the site, could we also deal with the Belvedere Tower, please? And views from outside the site, Mr. de Welsh, please.
Well, we might as well continue with CD 253, as this shows the relationship of the Belvedere Tower with the east wing of the hotel, and the layout plan indicates the retention of a path around the periphery of the eastern wing, providing some setback from the Belvedere, but in my opinion the hotel wing would encroach upon the Belvedere and create and hem it in quite a narrow corridor-like arrangement. In contrast, if we look at the Trust's design and access statement, in section 6, there is a perspective view looking over the playground with the Belvedere in situ, and in my opinion this creates a very appropriate visual setting for the Belvedere. Not only has the gymnasium been removed, which to some extent cramps it, but also it is now given a generous area of open space from which to appreciate it.
Now, keeping that document open, I want to deal with two issues. First of all, we've now moved inside the site because we're looking at the context from inside the site. In terms of the eastern and southern boundary walls from inside the site, could you compare what is being provided by the Trust compared to the appeal proposals?
The Trust's proposals will develop up to the boundary wall and extend its vertical height by some distance to accommodate the glazing and the railings. So an appreciation of the inside of that wall will obviously go, but in my opinion the benefits of that are realised particularly from outside the site in terms of that, the views from Regent Terrace and Regent Road looking up towards Carlton Hill. in relation to the appeal proposals, a path is retained around the perimeter of the eastern block that will provide an offset to the east and southern walls, but I'm not entirely convinced that will be much more than a corridor type effect around the perimeter of the buildings. And clearly the appeal proposals do not afford the same advantage in terms of visibility to Carlton Hill from outside the site.
And in terms of just keeping lastly with the Belvedere sites, Belvedere Tower from long distance views from the south, I think those have been put in Mr Van Grieken's latest visualisations from viewpoint 10. And how would the Trust's proposals fare in comparison to the either of the appellant's proposals from that viewpoint in respect to the Belvedere Tower?
In elevated views from the south, in relation to the Trust's proposals, you will be able to see the Belvedere, accepting that the lower story of it would be concealed, but that's not the part that you see in distant views. It's the upper parts of the Belvedere would be entirely visible from viewpoint 10. In the Trust's, beg your pardon, in the appeal proposal, Scheme 1, you would see the Belvedere separated from the Eastern Hotel wing. But in Scheme 2, the shift of the Eastern wing further northeast means that you would get a partial view of the Belvedere. So taking those together, the Trust's proposals are advantageous in that they reveal it to its fullest extent.
No. And carry out an assessment, it would be fair also to have a look at the north retaining wall. And again, I would just be interested in your views on both outside, first of all, which would be from probably Carlton Hill Drive, and thereafter inside on the differing effects of the respective schemes. On setting only, please, Mr Welsh.
I've taken up the Trust's landscape and visual visualisations. Apologies, I don't have the reference number. And I was going to turn to viewpoint, the last viewpoint, 15 Carlton Hill Drive. The baseline view, which stretches across 2 pages, reveals that the photograph has been taken asymmetrically with the centre of the portico, and that was with intent, because if you turn to the montaged view, it reveals the proposed development at close range, in my opinion, to its worst extent, recognising that the Planning Permission has not approved the glass cupolas at that height. This has been recognised as a significant visual impact and a significant adverse visual impact from this location. Parts of the development would be either in contact with or very close to the retaining wall, and I would have to say that that's a significant visual effect on that wall, in my opinion. In terms of the appeal proposals, my understanding is that they are set back from the wall and therefore would be advantageous over the Trust's proposals in that particular area. Having said that, it is important not just to consider the visual effect on the walls themselves, but also the Hamilton building from Carlton Hill Drive when making a complete assessment of the effect on Carlton Hill Drive. And we have visualisations for Scheme 2 from that location, which, in my opinion, present a significant adverse visual impact from that location.
And is it also a position whereby you have raised issues about the location of that viewpoint, and in particular whether an appropriate viewpoint has been provided to reflect, for example, the eastern hotel wing from Carlton Hill Drive? Is that correct?
I am concerned that we do not have an equivalent photo montage looking both east and west from Carlton Hill Drive that allows you to make a comparable assessment to this one, to viewpoint 15 in the Trust's TVIA for the appeal proposals. And furthermore, I would say that this view was deliberately taken asymmetrically to present a worst case. We could, for example, have moved further down the path and taken a view centred on the portico, which would have potentially looked less significant by presenting a framing effect. But I think the absence of a montage here is unfortunate in the Scheme 2 proposals.
Thanks very much. So that concludes.
Thanks for that both. Mr. Steele.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Welsh, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, firstly, I expect we'll be able to agree that you're an extremely experienced witness.
That's very kind of you to say so.
And better still, you're highly respected, one of the foremost landscape architects in Scotland, Mr. Welsh. Is that correct?
I don't think I'm the best person to judge that.
But notwithstanding that, Mr. Welsh, is it also fair to say that you don't always get it correct?
I would like to think that, in my opinion, I get it correct, but it certainly is the case that in respect of some appeals and inquiries, the decision maker has taken a view which opposes mine.
And in particular, in one recent appeal decision, did the reporter not agree with your assessments and judgments on the one hand, but did agree with the assessments of judgments of Mr Van Grieken on the other?
We were both acting for the same party. So therefore, it wasn't a case of presenting opposing evidence to one another. We were presenting different evidence on the same side of a development proposal. So it's not as if Mr Van Grieken appeared against me. He appeared alongside me, and the reporter accepted his evidence and did not accept mine. But it wasn't on a comparative basis.
No, I didn't suggest it was a comparative basis, Mr Welsh. You were giving complementary evidence, but in truth, the reporter rejected your evidence and accepted that of Mr Van Grieken. Is that a fair way of putting it?
No, I don't think that's a fair way of putting it. The reporter, having heard all the evidence, formed his own opinion. In his report, he was not overtly critical of my evidence. He just formed his own opinion to the contrary.
He didn't criticise it at all, to be fair. He just simply didn't agree with it, did he?
That is correct. He didn't agree with it, as is quite often the case in this type of work.
And I can't precisely remember the details, but that was because he felt, rightly or wrongly, that you had either overstated or understated the significance.
In that case, he felt I had understated the significance of a very small number of effects.
Now, you say, and I'm only going to be referring, Mr. Welsh, to your main report document. You say at paragraph 3 that you normally act on behalf of developers and it is unusual that you appear to support an objection.
Yes, it is unusual that I appear in this role.
Well, is it, Mr. Welsh? Because, in fact, you are appearing on behalf of a developer who has a competing scheme, in their mind at least.
I am appearing on behalf of a charitable trust that is promoting an alternative scheme for the same site.
Indeed.
And who is an objector to the appeal proposals.
They are trying to develop the site in an alternative fashion.
That is what they seek to do.
So the truth is you are, in fact, appearing on behalf of a developer.
No, technically the High School Preservation Trust is not a developer. It is a charitable trust seeking to develop a project, but they are not a developer as such.
Could we turn to paragraph 29 of your report? And I wonder if you may possibly have overstated the position here, Mr. Welsh. What you say is, taking it short, together it produces one of the most significant and memorable compositions in a city anywhere. Do you think it's possible that's slightly overstating the position?
No, I'm afraid I do not. I think that Carlton Hill is an iconic composition and a recognisable one, and that makes it internationally recognisable. And I heard Mr. Van Grieken's cross-examination, and he was struggling to identify another location in the UK which you could consider in the same vein. And I have had the opportunity, which he didn't have, to consider this over the past few days, and I still cannot find a location in the UK that is as significant and memorable as Carlton Hill is to the City of Edinburgh.
Well, in paragraph 29, you make it worldwide by saying in a city anywhere, don't you? You don't restrict it to the UK.
I do not.
Well, I have taken the opportunity to Google the words that you set out here, Mr. Welsh, and I'd like you to make comment on the following cities: Rome, Barcelona, Cape Town, Hong Kong, Ontario, Colorado, KL, Shanghai, New York, Macau, Toronto, Vienna, Washington and Seattle, all of which came up as the top 14 of the most significant compositions worldwide, and Edinburgh didn't feature. Now, in that context, Mr. Welsh, would you be prepared to accept that you may possibly have overstated the position?
Given that it is one of a relatively small number of World Heritage sites, which does give it that international recognition, I think what I've said here is perfectly fair. It produces one of the most significant. I didn't Google it, but I think the list you presented there, Edinburgh sits very comfortably in that mix.
But not mentioned. Now, Mr. Welsh, as I understand it, you accept that the public realm, and I'm not going to get into the detail, could do with a little bit of improvement. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you also accept that our proposals create such improvement?
I have conceded in my report that the public realm proposals included within the appeal proposals would be beneficial, but they cannot be divorced from the development that is required to enable them.
No, of course that is true, Mr Welsh, but I'm just trying to see at the moment what we can agree about to cut down the time that's going to be taken. So we can agree that the public realm improvements are a benefit of the proposal to be weighed in the balance.
Yes.
Could you look, please, at document CD 383? Now, firstly, Mr Welsh, have you seen and studied this document before?
No.
Well, that's unfortunate, but let me then take you to it. If you go to the end page of that document, do you see a page headed Potential Height?
Yes.
And perhaps just to put it in context, which I should have done if you haven't seen this before, if you go back to the very front page, do we see this was pre-application advice given by the City of Edinburgh Planning Department?
Yes, I can see that. I'm just not clear whether it's in relation to Scheme 1 or 2.
Well, in a sense, it doesn't matter because it's advice in relation to the site, Mr Welsh.
Thank you.
And status of the advice, could you just please read out the first paragraph? This is
pre-application advice only. Its purpose is to guide design proposals for the site with regard to the potential for new build. Volumetric information is not intended to illustrate a form that can be filled. Rather, its intention is to show a physical envelope within which a design can emerge.
So could we go to the last page as I did earlier, and the potential heights is the heading of that page. And do we see there, so far as the east wing is concerned, a visual envelope within which the City of Edinburgh Council gave certain advice about the suitability of development?
Yes, I can see that it says an area there at 86.5 metres AOD as the ceiling to that envelope.
Yes. Thank you.
Clearly that's appreciably exceeded by the appeal proposals.
Well, how appreciably exceeded is it by the appeal proposals, Mr Welsh?
The appeal proposals extend up to 89.45 metres, so therefore 3 metres above.
89.45, that's your understanding of the position, is it?
That is the height of the lift shaft on the eastern wing.
And what is the height of the main structure?
88.49.
And insofar, and you call in that context a couple of metres appreciable, do you, Mr Welsh, or is that possibly overstating the position?
I'm not entirely sure what led the Council to conclude that this was a maximum envelope rather than I think it almost refers to it as being a target, not to be a...
Where does it say the word target?
It doesn't say target. It's how I've interpreted it, a form that can be filled.
Have you read this before, Mr Welsh?
Well, no, I've just read the introduction that you asked me to read. Volumetric information is not intended to illustrate a form that can be filled. It suggests that it's a physical envelope in which a design could emerge, and the current design proposals exceed that.
Insofar as the floor plate is concerned, how do we compare with what is shown here?
The footprint extends further or closer to, and obviously connects with, the Royal High School, which is not shown here. Otherwise, it's fairly consistent. Indeed, it shows the development going up to the, we called it the eastern wall earlier, with a setback from the southern wall. But it does very clearly show that the development is set back from the Royal High School by some distance.
Can we agree that, say for the point that you're making, that we are well within that footprint? Because we're pulled back from the north boundary wall, and we're pulled back from the east boundary wall, and we're pulled back from the south boundary wall.
In respect of the north, south and eastern sides, I would say the footprint is highly consistent, but in terms of the western boundary, clearly the appeal proposals extend well beyond it.
Now, you have made certain findings about visibility and effects and significance of visibility. What account have you taken of the advice that we were given, Mr Welsh, about the suitability of the eastern area for development of the type that we've just looked at? What account have you taken of that?
I haven't sought to take account of the planning advice or design advice that may have been given to the scheme. My role in this inquiry has been to assess the townscape and visual impact and to establish whether or not I can agree with its findings, and that really is the focus of my evidence.
Well, that I understand. Perhaps I can cut this matter short. May we agree that you have taken no allowance or consideration whatever of the advice from the City of Edinburgh Council in relation to the suitability of built development in the eastern area, for the simple reason that you didn't know about it?
I did not take account of it because I didn't know about it. That wasn't the object of my task for the purposes of presenting evidence to this inquiry.
And can we agree that certain of your evidence about the findings of significance would be in conflict with the advice given by the City of Edinburgh Council about the suitability of that area for development?
That may well be the case. I didn't set out to seek to agree with the City of Edinburgh Council. I undertook an independent review of the townscape and visual assessment and came to my own conclusions about the significance of those effects.
Yes, I understand that fully, Mr Welsh, but can we agree that certain of your findings will be in conflict with the opinion of the Edinburgh Council in that document?
Well, I'm going to object to the question on the basis of it has no foundation. The difference is this is a document of planning advice, and the subject matter of which Mr Welsh has repeatedly responded to is an environmental assessment. There is no evidence to suggest that the Council did not think that the effects that would arise from the redevelopment would be significant or not. That's a totally different question, and I don't think it's a fair question given the document's provenance and its purpose. The question of environmental assessment and significant effects is not influenced by what may have not have been said in a pre-planning exercise. So I object to the question because the way in which it's put is somehow that this document would be a matter that would preclude the findings of significant effect. I just don't accept that's a fair and valid basis on which to proceed.
I don't think that's what I put to the witness, sir. What I'm firstly trying to establish is whether he's taken into account and whether some of his evidence is at odds with the advice that has been given. It's as simple as that.
Yes, and I've noted Mr Welsh is saying that may be the case, so that's probably as far as we can take that.
If he accepts that, sir, that's excellent, and we can move on. I hadn't understood that. Apologies. Right, well, that's very helpful, Mr Welsh. Thank you. Now, so far as the montages are concerned and the detailed criticism about the height of the white bus, montages and all of the visual information is simply a guide to assist the decision maker, isn't it, Mr Welsh?
It is intended to assist a competent assessment in the first instance, and then to assist the decision maker in reaching a properly informed opinion of what the impacts of the development may be, and therefore the accuracy of that information is critical. There are two types of information that come in with planning applications. One is in support of an environmental statement, which requires to be rigorously and accurately prepared, and then there can be artistic impressions, sketches, etc., which are not used for the same purpose. But in my opinion, the visualisations need to be technically accurate.
Well, Mr Welsh, even if you're right about the height of the bus, of which we've had no prior notice, do you really suggest anything's going to turn on that bus?
The bus serves to underpin my concern that the visualisations contained within the ES for schemes 1 and 2 are not reliable.
And do you accept that in the copying it may be that things have got altered, so to speak? Is that possible, Mr Welsh?
No, it isn't, and I've viewed them online. We have done technical comparisons of them, and there are mismatches there which are not readily explained.
Yeah. Well, they might have been explained if they'd been put to Mr Van Grieken, I suppose. Would that be fair? Can we leave it this way, Mr Welsh, that these are a guide to assist decision makers who are well aware of the situation, are they not?
I disagree that they are a guide. They are highly technical information around which major planning decisions can be made, and therefore they need to be accurate.
And were you here when Mr Van Grieken gave his evidence?
I was not, but I have watched most of it on DPEA TV.
In that event, you will know that Mr Van Grieken made it perfectly clear that his evidence was based on fieldwork, didn't he?
Yes, and I would match that by saying so's mine.
Well, I sincerely hope that is the case, Mr Welsh. And if that is so, Mr Van Grieken's evidence, even if you're right about the height of the bus, Mr Van Grieken's evidence is not affected by it, is it?
I have made it clear in my inquiry report that I have been able to make a competent assessment using the materials provided. I've also identified where I think there are notable shortfalls in information, but that doesn't excuse the fact that for a major application of this type, visually verified photomontages have not been produced.
Right. Well, we'll leave it to the reporters to decide what weight they will place on the bus and the size of the bus, Mr Welsh. Now, going back to more important matters, paragraph 37, you confirm that you do not undertake an evaluation of the likely effects on the overall setting of the buildings. Is that so?
Yes, that's correct.
And at paragraphs 86 to 87, you go on to deal with the townscape and landscape issues.
Yes.
And it's fair to say that you and Mr Van Grieken agree with many of those, about many of those matters, do you not?
We agree in a number of instances that a significant effect arises, but the computation of sensitivity and magnitude of change may be different between us, and we have a fundamental differing of opinion in relation to the nature of those effects where some are identified as beneficial.
Well, can I just try and understand it very briefly, Mr. Welsh? If Mr. Van Grieken has found the effects to be significant, you agree with them broadly, but if he doesn't find them to be significant, you have not agreed with them. Is that a summary of this section?
I am happy to say that in relation to significance, that is the case, but I would ask the reporters to delve deeper than that and consider the other factors, because there is a difference between a significant effect that arises from a minor magnitude of change to one that arises from a high.
And the main difference between you relates to the situation of the geographical effect or geographical extent of effect on the particular area. Is that correct?
In relation to landscape effects, that is the case. And also through his adoption of the townscape assessment, the criticism I raised in my precognition of a failure to properly account for the value of the World Heritage Site.
Because, as you tell us, I mean, is the nub of the matter not to be found at paragraph 92 of your evidence, that you do not, line 3, sorry, I'll let you get it. You've already got it yellowed up, Mr. Welsh. I do not support such an approach, as it suggests that a notable but geographically small effect on a high-valued resource need not be reported as significant because it does not extend to the whole unit. Is that not the difference of professional opinion between you in respect of this issue?
In respect of the extent of a designation or a character type, that is the case, but it is important to have regard to the other concern I've made about under-representation of value in sensitivity.
Well, let's just deal with it a step at a time. The geographical extent, first, Mr. Welsh, that is a dispute between you. Mr. Van Grieken places reliance on the fact that the geographical effect is small, and you don't agree with that approach.
That is correct.
Could we look, please?
Can I interrupt there, Mr. Steele? This is an issue I've been thinking about too. So you and Mr. Van Grieken have a difference of opinion on that. Is there anything in the GLVIA or elsewhere that would help us to come to a conclusion as to what the best approach to that question?
Sir, I don't want to cut across this, but that's exactly the next series of questions I was going to be putting to this witness, if that assists. If you're happy with that. Yeah. So these are precisely my next series of questions, Mr. Welsh. Can we look at the GVLIA CD 452?
Thank you.
I'm going to take this in order of the document. Please, could we look, please, at page 37, which is headed Assessing the Significance of Effects. Do you have that?
I have that, yes. I have that.
And if we then go to, under that heading, to the Step 1 assessment at 3.26, do we see at the 4th bullet point that one of the initial steps to be considered, I'm reading the matter short, of course, one of the initial steps that should be considered, or should be to consider, sorry, each effect, and that's the geographical extent of the area that will be affected.
That is, I would agree with you that is one of the factors that you need to consider.
So that Mr. Van Grieken is correct to both consider it and place some weight on the geographical extent of the area that will be affected, is he not?
He is correct to consider it as one of many considerations in reaching a view on the magnitude of impact.
And if we also then turn to page 91, at paragraph 550, do we yet again see a confirmation that consideration must be given to the geographical extent over which the landscape effects will be felt?
Yes, that's very much what the guidance suggests there, also noting that the extent will vary widely depending on the nature of the proposal, and there can be no hard and fast rules about what categories to use.
Of course. And in general effects may have an influence at the following scales, although this will vary according to the nature of the project. But the point I put to you again is, Mr Van Grieken correct in terms of paragraph 5.5 to have regard to the geographical area over which the landscape effects will be felt?
He is quite right to consider it, as have I, but you can't just cherry pick one element of an assessment. You have to weigh other factors, and moving on in GLVIA, it requires you to have particular regard to the character of nationally valued landscapes that are likely to be of the greatest significance. So it is one of a number of factors considered in understanding magnitude of effect.
Mr Welsh, I don't suggest anything other to you than that, but can we agree that the geographical extent point is one that the GVLIA requires to be taken into account and weight to be placed on? Not all the weight, of course, obviously not, but weight to be placed on.
It is one of a number of factors that are weighed up.
Is the point further emphasised at page 115, paragraph 6.40, where the same point is made yet again?
Yes, it is. It's made in relation to both landscape
and visual.
And visual.
Yes. Yeah. But just to be clear, this paragraph emphasises yet again that geographical extent is relevant and must be considered and weighed in the balance.
It is weighed as part of the evaluation of magnitude of change.
And the third bullet point at 640 confirms that in terms.
It does. Having said that, I would also stand very firmly by my assessment in paragraph 92. Because if you adopted the approach absolutely, then you could have incremental attrition of a highly valued part of a big designation that could never be significant.
Well, I don't think that's what we're suggesting here, Mr Welsh.
Well, it is what is assessed. It is how the appellant's assessment presents it.
Can I just return, please, to this issue? Can we therefore agree that the approach adopted by Mr Van Grieken in having regard to and placing weight on the geographical extent point is consistent with the GVLIA?
I would say it is consistent with one part of many considerations in applying GLVIA.
And if I look for but one example at paragraph 90 of your proof of evidence, you have assessed the effects on the townscape receptor, in this case of the Edinburgh World Heritage Site. I'll let you get that, Mr Welsh.
I have that, thank you.
And the very first sentence that you have under the assessment is that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on the overall geographical extent of the World Heritage Site.
Yep, that very much formed part of my assessment.
And that is because the geographical area affected will not be the whole of the World Heritage Site. Isn't that correct? It will only be a small portion of it.
It is a part of the World Heritage Site.
And for another example, if we turn the page to the Newtown Gardens GDL, you see this in your assessment at lines 4 and 5. While it would not have a significant impact on the whole designation, it would significantly impact the views of Carlton Hill, etc. I wonder if that's a very fair way of putting it, Mr. Welsh, or perhaps you're slightly overstating the position. Can you give us an indication as to what percentage of the GDL this development will be visible from?
No, I can't give you that off the top of my head.
Can we agree?
It's not an approach that I would be persuaded was suitable.
Can we agree that it will be impossible to see the development from the vast majority of the GDL?
I would need to see a copy of the ZTV overlaid on the GDL to confirm whether vast is appropriate.
Well, Mr. Welsh, do you really need to see that? Let's just look at this briefly and sensibly. How far west does the GDL extend?
It extends across the whole of the new town.
And are you, as a landscape architect, familiar with developments in this area of the type that you've told us about, the impact centre, so on and so forth, not perfectly well aware that it will be impossible to see this development from the vast majority of the GDL? Do we really need a ZTV from that, or a little bit of common sense? Would that not give you the answer?
I am happy to accept that the impact on the GDL is confined to Carlton Hill and the southern side of Carlton Hill in landscape terms. I am also happy to accept that it does not affect the GDL west of that approximate area of Carlton Hill. It has a localised impact, but on a critically important part of the GDL.
Well, I understand you're keen to get the points that are difficult for us in, Mr. Welsh, but at the moment I'm asking about geographical extent. Can we agree that so far as geographical extent of the GDL is concerned, the vast majority of the GDL, Newtown Gardens GDL, will be unaffected because you simply can't see it?
I would accept that the majority of the GDL would not be affected.
Would you be so bold as to agree with me that it's the vast majority, Mr. Welsh, or could you not go that far?
I can't. I think it's unreasonable to ask me to go that far without looking at a ZTV overlaid on a designations plan.
Really? And you don't know that the area to the west of Carlton Hill represents the vast majority of the GDL, from which you've already accepted it can't be seen?
From which there are buildings right across the new town with views of Carlton Hill.
So you will agree, I think you said the majority, but you won't agree the vast majority. Is that your professional?
Yes.
So I note that it's...
Time for a break. And thanks for your plug, Mr. Welsh, of DPEA TV. I'm sure that will be appreciated in Falkirk. So let's break now until 10 to 12. Continuing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Welsh, may I now turn to the Belvedere? Can we agree, hopefully briefly, that insofar as the Belvedere is concerned, our proposals represent a benefit to the Belvedere as against the current situation?
the appeal proposals are taller than the gymnasium building, and therefore will have appear vertically above the Belvedere. So I'm not convinced that they are better, albeit I accept that the removal of the gymnasium is beneficial to the Belvedere.
Sorry, Mr. Welsh, I thought that this would be a simple matter to agree. Let me take it. If you can't agree with me, let me take it in stages. At the moment, is it possible to see the Belvedere in any meaningful way? Or visit it?
You can see it if you're on the site, and you can see it from places like parts of Arthur's Seat, but I appreciate it's
Sorry, you say you can see the Belvedere at the present time from Arthur's Seat?
My recollection is you can see it to the right of the to the right of the gymnasium from parts of Arthur's Seat.
And how is that possible, Mr. Welsh?
My recollection is that it sat partly to one side of the gymnasium building, but I will get a plan out. That will help me.
Well, just before you do that, Mr. Welsh, how many times have you been on site? On the site itself?
I have been onto the site once.
Have you visited the Belvedere? Have you been inside the gym?
I have been inside the gym. I have not been inside the Belvedere.
And I'm asking you to my question relates to the Belvedere only and the existing situation and proposed by us in relation to the Belvedere itself as a structure.
I consider there is a benefit in the removal of the gym. I consider that there is an impact from a vertical point of view from the eastern wing to the Belvedere, but I accept that you leave a space around it. So technically its setting has improved marginally.
Well, I understand fully the way you're trying to approach this, Mr. Welsh, have no fear, but can we agree that we will also refurbish and reinstate the Belvedere? Is that possibly an advantage, do you think?
It is an advantage in the same way that the public realm proposals are an advantage, but they are advantages that cannot be divorced from the wider development proposals.
Well, let's just take it a step at a time. And can I just repeat my earlier question to you, Mr. Welsh? Can we agree that insofar as the Belvedere itself is concerned, what we propose is an advantage over the current situation? And surely that must be so.
I don't accept that surely it must be so. Surely it must be so. I think it's a fairly finely balanced difference. The eastern wing is taller than the gymnasium building, so and you can see, for example, in some of the visualizations that the appellant has produced for scheme 2, that the Belvedere is masked by the scheme 2 eastern wing. So we gain from the removal of the gym, but we lose because of the height and proximity of the eastern wing. So I will not agree with you that there's a clear advantage. I think this is a finely balanced consideration.
And we will refurbish the Belvedere, will we not? Is that an advantage, possibly?
Certainly there is an advantage to the restoration of the Belvedere from its current state.
So can we possibly agree now, Mr. Welsh, that insofar as my original question is concerned, there will be an advantage in relation to the Belvedere as adjudged against the current status quo?
I would accept that there will be an advantage insofar as the Belvedere is restored, but its setting will also be comprehensively redefined by the new eastern wing. So there are pros and there are cons.
Well, Mr. Welsh, is that really very fair? The setting of the Belvedere, surely on any fair professional objective judgment, will actually be improved because we take a building away from its immediate surroundings and improve the setting, surely.
You also put another taller building in close proximity to it.
Yes, that's true. But weighing these things, is it not obvious that there's still an advantage?
There is an advantage in terms of the physical fabric of the Belvedere.
And
I do not accept that there is a tangible advantage in terms of its visual setting.
So you don't see any advantage to the setting at all, that people will be able to walk round it and see it both close at hand and from viewpoints we'll look at shortly?
I have accepted that there is an advantage to its physical restoration, and the fact that you can walk to the base of it is advantageous, but you can't divorce that from the fact that you will be in a fairly narrow corridor with a four-storey building immediately to your right-hand side as you walk towards it.
How wide is the corridor? Sorry, I thought you'd... If you haven't finished, please do so. If you have finished, how wide is the narrow corridor?
About 6 metres, I would say.
Not that narrow, really, is it? 20 feet or so. Not far off the width of this room. Mr. Welsh, hardly fair to describe that as a narrow corridor, is it?
This room is appreciably wider than 6 metres. Bearing in mind that you have 4 stories of a vertical 4 stories of hotel block immediately to your right, that is a disadvantage. I can only say that I think it's finely balanced. I think there are advantages, I've acknowledged those, but there are also disadvantages in that its setting is not restored with any great degree of openness. It has as the cross-section we looked at earlier shows, it has a taller building positioned within 6 or 7 metres from it.
Yeah. I suppose that's to be compared and contrasted with Burying about a third of its height, is that right?
The Trust's proposals create a playground at first storey level which will afford a very open appreciation of its setting and of a refurbished building.
Well, it's not going to provide a very open view of the setting of the bottom approximately 1/3 of the building because that will be underground. Is that not fair, Mr. Welsh?
I wouldn't accept it as much as 1/3.
Well, we'll leave that to the reporters. Now, let's see if we can agree about a few things sensibly, Mr. Welsh. So far as the northern retaining wall is concerned, do we propose, so far as the immediate setting of the northern retaining wall is concerned, an advantage over the current situation?
I would say yes, of a moderate proportion.
Thank you. That's helpful. And so far as the northern retaining wall is concerned, your proposal, by which I mean the Trust Oblique Music School's proposal, involves building hard up against a reasonable portion of its length, doesn't it?
Yes.
Sorry, I meant to ask you straight after the break. From whom are you taking instructions in this matter, Mr. Welsh? Which of the various bodies?
I am providing independent landscape and visual expert witness services to my client, the Trust. That's
what I was wondering. Is the which trust is that? Is it the Royal High School Preservation Trust, or is it the Dunard Funder Trust? Or is it the music school?
It is the Royal High School Preservation Trust.
Thank you. Now, so far as the southern boundary wall is concerned, it may be helpful to have the document 563 in front of you.
Thank you, I have that.
And if you look at section 6 of the document, unnumbered pages, but it's headed the new building, the particular page I'm taking you to initially. And I'd just like to make sure that or we can understand the proposals. Right-hand page, the new building.
I have it, left-hand page. Thank you.
Well, whichever page it is, I hope the wording's the same, Mr. Welsh. Now, as I understand the position, the intention is to build hard up against the southern retaining wall from a northerly direction. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the northern facade of the retaining wall will disappear from view. Is that correct?
A part of it, because part of it is currently concealed behind the refectory.
Well, let me rephrase the question. The entire part of the retaining wall will not be available to view as a result of your proposals along its entire length, 75, 80 metres, whatever it is.
Yes, that is correct.
And at the present time, are there railings on top of the retaining wall, or boundary wall as it may be?
Yes.
And do I understand they get removed?
They get reinstated higher up, and you can see them in the cross-section lower down on that page.
But before they get reinstated, they get removed from the A-listed wall. Is that correct? That would be a logical sequence, probably.
Yes.
And in their stead, am I to understand that there will be a series of windows placed on top, if it proves to be possible, on top of the wall? That's what I now understand, on top of the original retaining oblique boundary wall. Is that the position?
Sir, I have no question with the broad thrust of the question, but it's Mr. Steele's little asides about whether it would be possible have got nothing to do with the question he's about to ask, and I don't think it's appropriate to add those asides into the question.
So if Mr. Welsh doesn't understand the question, no doubt he'll say so. I think it's a perfectly fair question, if it proves to be possible. I don't see what the possible objection can be, except a sensitivity about the matter, possibly. Mr. Welsh, is that your understanding, that these windows will be put back, or sorry, not put back because they're not there in the first place, will be placed on top of the wall?
No, that wasn't the evidence given. There was a material put below that of which the window sat. And again, that is incorrect. I mean, that's not the evidence that's been given, very clearly.
Well, what is your understanding about the position then, Mr. Welsh?
I am not from Richard Murphy Architects, and I do not have that level of technical detail, but my understanding is that a new building will be placed against the wall. The way in which it actually connects to the wall, I am not capable of answering for you. In other words, there is a modern intervention in terms of accommodation placed against the boundary wall.
Yes, that's certainly understood, and ultimately it will be a matter for the reporter's notes. But my understanding of what was said yesterday by Mr. Narrow was that the windows would be placed atop of that wall. Maybe I misheard the situation, in which case I'll be corrected in re-examination. But is that your understanding of the position?
they will be seen, perhaps if we use the word behind the wall, but rather than on top of it, they will be set back from the top of the wall, I understand.
Well, that's really the purpose of the questioning, because I understood yesterday Mr Narrow said they were to be on top of the wall, and yet if you turn 2 or 3 pages further on, does it appear that the windows are actually recessed back? This is a perspective view looking over the secure east playground.
Yes, and it would make sense to me that they were set back to use the top of the wall as a sill of some sort, but I am not an architect.
But so far as the setting is concerned, the north will be completely concealed by the new building, and the top of the wall either will have windows sitting on top of it or windows sitting behind it with the new sill in front of it, depending on what the understanding of the position is. Is that right, Mr Wells?
Not quite right. The north wall will not be entirely concealed. For a part of its length, it will have a new build placed against it. The southern wall will have a single-storey building sited against it, the windows of which will view out across the top of the wall. And it's very clearly shown in that perspective view.
And just while we're on, which perspective are you looking at? Can I just be clear?
The one showing the
And what,
East Playground and Belvedere.
Yeah. Well, just on the question of the Belvedere, Mr Welsh, you've been silent so far about the object perched on top of the Belvedere, which, as I understand it, relates to plant and equipment. Was there any particular reason you didn't mention that?
No, it doesn't particularly concern me, because in the views back towards it, at close range it won't be visible, I believe, because it's set back into the centre of the roof space. And from further away, providing it's coloured sensitively, I see no difficulty in accommodating a modern intervention of that type on a listed building. You only need to look at Quarter Mile to see such examples.
I just wonder, at Quarter Mile, is that comparable with what we're talking about here, Mr Welsh? I realise that's where your office is, but is that really comparable with what we're talking about?
I'm talking in respect of an adjustment to a Grade A listed building, and there are plenty of examples in Quarter Mile of Grade A listed buildings with sensitively planned extensions, additions to them. And
which would be better, to have that piece of metal, whatever it is, plonked on top of it, or not to have it plonked on top of it? Which would be preferable?
Providing it's designed well, I don't have a difficulty with it. Clearly, to have nothing there would be preferable. That's it. Logic follows.
Thank you. Now, can we look, please, at your assessment of the viewpoints? And firstly, can we agree that all of the viewpoints were agreed between the relevant professionals in our team and the City of Edinburgh Council?
I accept that.
And secondly, what matters in all of this is to be found at, I think, is at table 3, being the significance of effect.
Yes.
Can we also agree, again, I hope equally swiftly, that on the majority of occasions, indeed the vast majority of occasions, Mr Welsh, that you and Mr Van Grieken are in agreement?
In most cases, we are in agreement in relation to the significance of effect. Where we differ, it is because he has adopted the TVIA, the appellant's TVIA, and it may have a different rating of magnitude to my assessment.
Mr.
In
Welsh.
terms of the ultimate position of significance, we agree in most instances, and as I said earlier, we do not agree on always on nature of effect, which
Well, Mr. Welsh, just slowly. You know I don't understand these things. Can you just take it slowly? On the vast majority of occasions, you agree in relation to the significant effects about these viewpoints. Arithmetically, that's correct, isn't it?
We agree on the finding of significance, but not the computation of it.
And there are 2 or 3 in which, so far as significance is concerned, you do not agree. Is that so? Possibly 4.
Yes, in relation to the selection of viewpoints that I have assessed.
Can we look, please, at the first viewpoint, which is the castle at ramparts, viewpoint 01. And in looking at the baseline photograph, 0102, is it obvious that the view that is available is wide and extensive?
Yes.
You can see well over to Fife and well round past Leith and so on and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes, certain parts of the view create more of a focal point than others.
And if we go to photograph 03, this shows again a wide panorama from Arthur's Seat round again to Leith, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, the cranes are at the St James Centre.
And if I ask you to look, please, at St Andrew's House, does that at the present time virtually merge visually with structures on the appeal site?
It does almost, but it doesn't completely. There is a gap where you see the vegetation on the western side of the appeal site, creating a break which allows the hillside to apparently flow down to the Cowgate.
And if I take you back in history, back in time, Mr. Welsh, where would the jail have been in this viewpoint?
I cannot tell you exactly.
Would it have interfered with the view across and towards the Royal High School building? Do you know that?
I'm very sorry, I do not know. I haven't seen a photograph of the jail from this location.
And if we then look to the montages, which are at 05, is it these that you say create the significant effect?
It's not necessarily the montages that create that, but when you take them to the viewpoint and look at the site, I believe it gives rise to a minor magnitude of change, which is significant.
And this is at a distance, can you just remind me, Mr. Welsh, of?
1.2 kilometres.
1.22, in fact, to be precise, to be pedantic. Is that so? Yeah.
Yes.
And your magnitude of change is minor, if I look at your table?
It is, as is the appellant's.
You have found that to be significant, whereas Mr Van Grieken says it's not significant. That's the conclusion.
That is correct.
And the reason that you give for that is the development will diminish the isolated prominence of the Royal High School as a building set in the landscape.
That is the reason I've summarised in there. But what I've also had regard to is the criteria in table M1.2 in CD 178.
Just before we turn to that, Mr Welsh, if I look at the montages, is it possible to see the eastern wing at all? Or does the issue only relate to the western wing, which sits in what previously was a very small area, almost merging between St Andrew's House and the site, the buildings on the site?
You can clearly see the eastern wing for the 2017 development proposal in Figure 7, above the Royal High School ridgeline. You are looking at the... Yes, you can see the 2017 development proposal in 05, which is the 90-degree view. I had moved on to the 53.5-degree panorama, which gives a more realistic impression of what you experience when you're there.
Yeah. And how much of that do you say you can actually see?
In the photomontage, you can see the lift shafts. You can see the upper story.
Sorry, which number are you looking at?
VP01 _ 07.
Yeah. And you say you see the lift shafts, is that it?
Well, I can see them montaged in the view in front of me. And you can see the upper floor of the eastern wing, and you see the lower floors of it dropping away behind the Hamilton building.
Well, I have to suggest to you, Mr Welsh, when one looks at the distance, considers the distance, the panorama of the view that's available, you're simply overstating, you're over-egging the pudding, aren't you?
No, I don't accept that when you apply the criteria in the methodology, the appellant's methodology.
Let's please look at viewpoint 10 from Arthur's Seat. And if we look at the baseline photograph, this confirms the extent of the view, which again is wide and also has considerable distance across to Fife, Moosmorran and the Forth Bridges. Does it not?
It does. And to the left of the frame, you look around and see Arthur's Seat summit itself out of this frame.
And just for the avoidance of doubt, this is the particular viewpoint that's just north of the summit.
Yes.
And we turn to look for ease of reference to drawing 1003. These contain the two montages, don't they?
They contain the two montages presented at 90 degrees, which provides the wider context, but it's important to also look at the subsequent pages, which provide a more accurate impression of what the eye might see when standing there.
Yeah. Well, whichever you look at, Mr Welsh, the new wings do not interfere with a clear view towards the monuments, do they?
They do not obscure the views of the monuments, but they significantly change your appreciation of Carlton Hill the monuments and their relationship to the Royal High School building.
And secondly, there is no skylining either, is there?
Not from this elevated position.
And whichever scheme we look at, the Belvedere is perfectly visible, is it not?
From this angle, it is more apparent in Scheme 1 than Scheme 2, but I accept that it is visible in both of them. Obviously, as you move around the hillside to Radical Road, you lose it behind Scheme 2 to a greater extent.
Now, again, this viewpoint is, there's a dispute between you. You say significant, and Mr Van Grieken says not significant. You have both applied the same sensitivity and magnitude of change, have you not?
I struggled slightly with Mark Van Grieken's inquiry report because he's not explicitly clear that if he doesn't assess a location, he adopts the LVIA, but that is what I have assumed. So I have assumed for viewpoint 10 that he has adopted the LVIA, which means that we are identical on magnitude of change, different on sensitivity, and I conclude that a moderate minor effect is significant, whereas the TVIA and Mr Van Grieken do not.
And you do that for the reasons set out there, that the development will be a noticeable component of the view and the development will detract from the key visual characteristics of the baseline view, including the composition of the buildings on the hill. Is that so?
That is so, and in reaching those conclusions, I've had regard to the criteria in Table M1.2.
And ultimately, this will be a matter for judgment and decision by others, Mr Welsh. I simply suggest to you, when you look at this sensibly and logically, you are yet again overstating the position.
I do not agree with that.
Fine, Mr Welsh. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Steele. Bear with us just for a second. Just one question, Mr Welsh, really arising from what we heard this morning when in examination in chief you were, I suppose, criticising the quality of some of the visualisations produced in the ES. And I think you said you in addition to looking at them and comparing them, you'd carried out some sort of technical assessment of them. So you've put them through your sausage machine, if you like. Is there any suggestion that in addition to changes in existing features that we should be doubtful about the extent of the new build shown in those visualisations?
I cannot say to you that I have any information that suggests the building has not been accurately modelled, but what I do say is I have doubt it has been positioned correctly, because there has been some movement and in the case of the pavilion, in that first view we looked at, it appears to have been remodelled, which seems unnecessary, but there has been some I'm not confident it's been positioned correctly.
So is there confidence about the size or extent of the new buildings, but just not how they've been placed in those visualisations, or wouldn't you go that far?
I do not have any information that would suggest that the buildings are physically incorrectly modelled. It is really to do with their location that gives me doubt, sir. And we do obviously have in front of the appeal elevations and sections which assist, and they assisted me during my assessment of it. But I'm just not confident that we use a term visually verified. So for the most recent TVIA we've produced for the impact centre, every viewpoint is surveyed. A model of the existing terrain and the existing buildings is accurately constructed, and the proposals are fitted into that, which is then overlaid on the photograph. So you have a trail to demonstrate the accuracy of the final image. And I'm not confident that we have that here.
Okay, thanks for that. Mr. Innes?
Sorry, can I just, if you'll allow me, can I just follow up slightly on that? When these images are constructed, are things lifted off and then put back? I'm just trying to find out if there are other ways that errors could be made. Could it be done in a simple way like that, or could it be that when it's reprojected, it's slightly out of line or out of focus? Are there other possibilities?
Very much that. You take your baseline photograph, which should be taken with a fixed 50mm lens camera, and therein we have a difficulty first off, because some of the views are taken with fisheye lenses or equivalent, so 20mm lenses or lower, and that produces distortion, whereas they should be taken with a 50mm lens on a panoramic head, so that you avoid any parallax or distortion at the edges. That allows you, if you know where the position is that they were taken from, you can put that into a computer model, a topo survey, which the building can be modelled into, and you can very accurately cross-reference the photo and the image. And that usually requires an element of fitting to the photograph, but not to the degree that we're seeing here.
But if a part of an existing image is going to be obscured or changed in some way, could that be inadvertently put back in the wrong place or out of alignment if it's lifted off? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do understand what you're trying to say. We have a process where you have the baseline, you have the wireline overlaid, and it allows you then to use Photoshop to mask, bring the building forward and lose elements that are in the foreground that would be obscured. But you don't actually take it away and bring it back in. That shouldn't.
Logically, it should be in the same place.
It should be in the same place.
Thank you.
Mr. Innes.
I'm missing one document, but I'll try and deal with it later. Mr. Welsh, if I could ask you, first of all, to go back to document 383, please.
I have that.
Great, thank you. And whilst Mr. Steele was very keen to look at the plan, can we also look at the text in relation to other aspects of this? And I'm just going to ask you, because you probably weren't given a chance in cross-examination, just to read page 1, and if you could just do so, I will then have some follow-up questions. Now, have you now had a chance to read through the document and see its context?
Yes.
And do we see there that in the left-hand column that this is stated to be pre-application advice only? And it's to,
Yes.
and it's to design. In terms of guidance in carrying out a landscape and visual assessment, what would this be the type of document that would be taken into account in carrying out an assessment?
No, it would not. You would start with a development proposal, so a step beyond this.
And from this document, can you attribute whether or not there are likely to be significant effects arising from the particular development in question?
No, you cannot.
But sticking to the document, could we look at what it says about the west side of the site? It says there's very limited potential for development on the west side of the site, as development will erode the landscape setting of the Hamilton building and the hill. Now, given some of the questioning that you were asked from views from the west, were some of the concerns that you've identified in your answers to questions from the Castle and Viewpoint 3C exhibited as one of the concerns of the Council?
Yes.
And is that the point? What is the point? What is the landscape setting of the Hamilton building and the hill on this west side?
Yes, it's very clear that this is guidance intended to steer development on the site, and it very clearly advises that the west side has limited potential because development would erode the setting of the Hamilton building and the hill.
And do the development appeal proposals promoted by the appellants accord with this element of advice or not?
No, they do not.
Thank you. Now, there is a landscape section that goes on because we've got an east of the site height thing, which ensures buildings are not higher than the existing gymnasium building. Now, was that a matter which was complied with by the appellant's proposals?
No.
Equally, is it just a question of height, or what other matters would come in, perhaps the clues in the heading, in terms of what might be relevant?
The brief or status of this advice is intended to guide the massing of built form on the site. So it's not only in terms of its lateral extents, but also its vertical height. And its relationship to existing buildings on the site.
In terms of under landscaping, do you agree or not agree with the statement that is made that landscape to the front is a vital component of the setting of the building and the monuments above and needs to be retained?
I would accept that landscape does need to be retained. When it says front, it's slightly ambiguous, but if it means the landscape on the western side as you approach, I think that is a vital component of the setting of the building to preserve the monuments.
Yeah, and equally, have we seen on the east side of the site above, there's a statement that must be avoid damage to trees out with the site by setting building back from the canopy of the trees that exist, and that would be the trees to the south.
Yes.
And insofar as the Trust's proposals are concerned, having regard to the various criteria applied, do they fully comply with the massing analysis produced in CD 383?
Yes.
Thank you.
And indeed, to the west, where some capacity was identified, it exceeds that in that no development is proposed by the Trust.
Now, you weren't taken to documents CD 482 or 477 in relation to your cross-examination, but there are matters that arise from it which are relevant in that there are matters which you've responded to. What I want to do is ask you very briefly about 482, which is the candidate special landscape area document, please.
I have that. I have 482.
Yeah. Can I ask you to look at in terms of this document, is this a background document which would be relevant to take into account in undertaking a townscape, landscape and visual assessment, Mr. Welch?
Yes.
And insofar as a number of your questions have talked about hill form and skyline, what do you understand by the first potential pressure upon the SLA?
I understand that care needs to be taken in terms of development that may affect an appreciation of the hill form. It doesn't necessarily need to be within the SLA. It could be development outside the SLA that affects an appreciation of the hill and its profile.
And one of the issues we're going to come and look at in this re-examination is clearly the magnitude of geographical change that was put to you extensively in cross-examination and the impact on the particular designation. What weight do you attach to matters such as the particular matters that are raised in respect of a designation?
I think that the particular matters, if you're talking in terms of their key characteristics or special qualities, those are the principal consideration when assessing how a development may affect the designation.
Sir, I was very careful in cross-examination only to ask questions about the magnitude point, geographical extent. We're way beyond that now, because that was the matter of dispute. And all my learned friend is doing is using this as an opportunity to make further points which do not arise directly out of cross.
Well, put it very bluntly, and I'm going to take Mr. Welsh with some care through this, is the point that was put in carrying out the assessment that effectively the magnitude of change was the matter at difference, and how could we reach a different decision? I am perfectly entitled in re-examination to go back and analyse with Mr. Welsh the wider context of that particular parameter in the overall assessment process. That has been raised by this cross-examination, and I believe I am entitled to go back there, sir.
I'm happy for that to continue.
So, in terms of taking the SLA, how sensitive would the slopes and the flanks of the hill be against that particular pressure?
Very sensitive. It's one of its key characteristics.
And insofar as we're looking at each or every one of these designations, we won't go to them all, you'll be pleased to hear Mr. Welsh, are there parts of a designation which may more strongly exhibit the key characteristics and have higher sensitivity than other parts?
Yes.
In terms of assessing the overall, and we'll come to look at the context of that, but assessing the overall likelihood of a significant effect, how important is that when considering a designation?
I don't think that it is a key consideration. It's something you would have regard to, but the principal focus of an assessment is how the special qualities or key characteristics would be affected, because it is they that combine to underpin the integrity of a designation.
And again, in terms of background context for townscape and landscape assessment, would CD 477 be a relevant document to take into account? That's the Edinburgh Landscape Character Assessment.
Yes.
And what do you, if you could have CD 170, sorry, 477, page 170.
Could you repeat the page reference, please?
It's page 170.
have that.
Yes. Now, insofar as this is a document which seeks to analyse landscape character, how important or what relevance do you attach to the fact that in paragraph 3.71 the Royal High School has been specifically mentioned and singled out within a landscape character assessment?
You said paragraph 3.71.
3.171.
I regard that to be particularly important or relevant. It has identified what it considers to be one of the key elements within the character type that help to make it what it is. And it says that of particular note is the former Royal High School.
And again, what weight do you attach to the following paragraph?
I afford a lot of weight to that, as I have said in my inquiry report. The layering of developments adds to the weight of the sensitivity.
So, just taking this character area that's being considered and the comments made specifically about the location of the Royal High School and its related monuments, how within this particular landscape area is the development area, how does it sit? Is it in an area which is important to it or not?
It sits in a part of the character area which has special mention in the character assessment and is therefore one of the more important parts of it.
If we could now go to the GLBIA, which is document SCD 542. Can we start off at page 88, please? Now, in terms of assessing landscape effects, how should we judge the fact that there are a range of factors that go into both sensitivity and magnitude of change?
I think if I've understood you, each element is considered in its own right and a process of professional judgment applied to assimilate those factors so that you arrive at a finding of, in the case of sensitivity, susceptibility to change and the value.
Mm-hmm. And insofar as that's concerned, when we get to matters, the value of landscape receptors, we see under the value at 545 that World Heritage Sites sit atop that pure value basis under paragraph 4.5.1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, could I ask you then to look at 546, which is a sort of, you've had the various designations, and it then goes on to have a bit of a discussion about what value, how value might be attributed, having regard to designation. Could you have a read of that paragraph? I've got a couple of supplementary questions that arise from that.
Yes.
Now, in that context, value is not simply attributed, or sensitivity is not, susceptibility is not just attributed on the basis of a designation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And insofar as let's make it relevant, insofar as where the appeal sites are located relative to these designations, again, having regard to those designations, do you consider that the appeal site's an important part or a lesser part of the designations?
It is in an important part, a critically important part of those designations, which means it is highly susceptible to the type of change that is proposed.
And how would that get taken into account in terms of that ultimate value judgment in respect of significance?
You would attribute a higher score to value and a higher score to susceptibility, which would lead you to a higher sensitivity.
And in terms of your experience in undertaking work within a World Heritage Site, presumably you are experienced in understanding which parts of a World Heritage Site might be more sensitive than others, given the geographic spread of the projects they've worked on.
I would like to think so, yes.
And how, in the context of the World Heritage Site, does the Carlton Hill site rank, in your view, as to sensitivity or susceptibility of change?
Of the highest order.
Thank you. It was put to you that in terms of one factor, 5.50, the geographic extent, that because Mr Van Grieken had had regard to the geographic extent in reaching his view on significance, that somehow was a differentiator between you. What weight did you attach to geographic extent in your characterisation and assessment of significance?
I acknowledged that the development was unlikely to have a significant impact on the designation as a whole, but then went on to assess how it would affect key characteristics or qualities that related particularly to the site, and found significant effects there.
Yeah. And we'll go on to look at that, but that presumably is the difference between you, is it? Is that the difference between you?
Yes, I think that is the principal difference.
So it's not that you haven't had regard to geographic extent, it's the follow-up analysis of how important the area is and the effect on that relative to the designation.
Yes.
Now, 5.56 perhaps assists. Now, do we see there underneath there's even a table, and we see of, in terms of matters that are potentially more significant, effects on rare, distinctive, particularly representative of landscape character or interposed townscape character could potentially be more significant.
Yes.
And
that is confirmed in the first bullet point above as well, the second part of it.
And does that support your analysis of how significance should be considered in a highly sensitive location?
Yes.
And I presume the issue is no different in the context of the visual sensitivity, which will be broadly similar.
That's right.
Thank you. I now ask you to have CD 490 available, please.
Yes.
Can I ask you, first of all, to have a look at page 18, please? And just to set the context, this is in Chapter 3, key information about the old and new towns of the Edinburgh World Heritage Site. it then goes on to have a section 3.5 extending universal value. Do we see that? Yes. And do we see at the bottom of the second column there the statement that this plan is a tool for influencing the development process in order to ensure that OUV of the site and its setting are understood and protected and sustained? Do we see that?
Yes.
And I just want your view on the next section, which suggests that large-scale developments may have an impact on OUV. Similarly, small-scale changes may also have an impact on OUV. What do you take from that, Mr. Welch?
I take from that we are a relatively small-scale change relative to the overall extent of the World Heritage Site, but that there is the potential that we may have an impact on its outstanding universal value.
And is that the critical part of the assessment that you've undertaken and is assessing the effect on the World Heritage Site?
Yes.
And if we go forward in the document to page 61, before we get there, I'm going to put a hypothetical to you, in the sense of, if I proposed to build a surface car park in the centre of Charlotte Square, I'm sure you're familiar with Charlotte Square, would it be fair to say that in respect of the overall area of design garden, that would constitute a very small area of the garden and it wouldn't be widely visible because it sits in a square?
Are you referring to the overall extent of the garden and design landscape,
Yeah.
the GDL? Absolutely. It's a very small part of the overall geographical area, but highly sensitive.
Yeah. And equally, if we took Charlotte Square, given it's surrounded by built development, that views into and out of it are limited to the axial routes that come in and out.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Just to say the views into and out of Charlotte Square would be quite limited because it is a square.
Yes. It is contained.
So if we followed the analogy that very significant development within a World Heritage Site, within conservation areas, etc., could be undertaken on the basis of it didn't have a significant effect on the whole of the designation. Is that correct?
I do not consider that is an appropriate way to assess the effects on nationally and internationally important designations of this type. You don't summarise it on the basis of the overall extent of the area. You look at the particular effects in the particular area concerned.
And if we look at paragraph or page 61 of CD 490, do we see halfway down a statement about Carlton Hill? Could you perhaps just read that out, please?
Carlton Hill is the most dominant designed landscape within the site due to its prominence and character. This never-completed project attracted complementary schemes of commemoration to focus on Carlton Hill, including the Nelson Monument, the Burns Monument and the Playfair Monument. Now,
again, having regard to your approach of identifying the designation and how valued the particular part of the development site is within it, how does the World Heritage Site guidance indicate that Carlton Hill is viewed?
That it is one of the most important parts of the landscape within that World Heritage Site.
And again, to avoid, to slightly repetitious, and how does the site fit within Carlton Hill?
It is a key component of Carlton Hill and of the monuments on Carlton Hill.
Thank you. If you can now move to CD 502, please.
I have that.
Now, just to put this in context, it's CD 502, Manning Change in the Historic Environment Setting, and it's a document which you quoted from in your inquiry report. So you've used this document in informing your approach to this, your evidence at this inquiry. Is that correct, Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
And I think in your, to be fair, I'll just leave this, but in your inquiry report you identify which aspects are within your professional judgment and which are not.
That is correct.
Yeah. Now, do we see on page 10, this is the final stage of a series of processes of baseline assessment, etc., etc. We now get to the stage of evaluating the potential impact of the proposed changes. And do we see under the third hash that the visual impact of the proposed change relative to the scale of the historic asset or the place in its setting is what is being a key factor?
Yes.
And insofar as we are dealing with heritage assets, including the designed garden, is this advice that you've taken into account in formulating your value judgment on significance?
Yes.
Do we also see underneath the page 11, the third bullet point, the following statement: the magnitude of the proposed change relative to the sensitivity of the setting of an asset, and then there's another hyphen, sometimes relatively small changes or a series of small changes can have a major impact on our ability to appreciate and understand a historical action or place. Points to consider include the ability of the setting to absorb new developments without eroding its key characteristics. Now, I appreciate that you're primarily restricted to considering the visual and landscape context. Is that correct?
Yes.
And insofar as that sets out the characteristics, from the baseline information that you have, landscape character assessments, the World Heritage aspects, what is the ability of the setting of the Royal High School to absorb new development without eroding its key characteristics?
Limited or low.
Mm-hmm. Again, would that be a factor, according to these criteria, which should be properly taken into account in assessing the significance and the magnitude of effect?
Yes, it would have an impact on the attribution of sensitivity.
Mr. Innes, I've just noticed it's 1 o'clock. Are you close to the end, or do you think we should break for lunch?
I've got further matters to address the inquiry on afterwards, so we might as well break for lunch.
Okay, let's do that. So we'll break now for an hour and start again at 2 o'clock. Mr. Innes, you're continuing with your re-examination.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Welch. It'll be relatively brief, you'll be pleased to hear. During your cross-examination, there was various references to Mr. Van Grieken's visualizations 596. And we'll keep to documents which have already been referred to, but at viewpoint 3, you were taken to 3A. Do you recall that? And
yes.
Yeah. Insofar as 3A, 03 is concerned, what is the purpose of this particular image?
To provide.
Can I just confirm what reference that is, please?
CD 596, VP 03A03.
Is that the North Bridge
Yes.
viewpoint? I didn't take the witness to that one.
I'm happy to go to any of the ones you took them to, but
Please, if you could, Mr. Innes, restrict your re-examination to cross-examination. I did not take the witness to that viewpoint.
well, it doesn't really matter which viewpoint it is. It's a point about visualizations, so I'm entitled to go any of these visualizations for this particular purpose. If we stick there, what's the purpose of these two images?
to provide visual context, it's 90-degree field of view, and to provide a comparison between the 2015 and 2017 developments in their context.
And insofar as we then have further visualisations 04 and 05, what is the purpose of them and why are they provided?
They provide a narrower field of view. You'll note that they are 53.5-degree field of view images, which accords with SNH guidance and which is intended to more accurately reflect what a person standing there would see with the naked eye.
And which should the reporters use in the field if they were carrying out an exercise of assessing the effects?
The 53.5.
Now, you were asked a series of questions, comparative questions on setting, Mr. Welsh. Could you have CD 757, please?
I have that.
But go to page 16 of 97.
So can I just put a marker down here, please? We've already had more than 30 minutes of re-examination, but I don't know where this is going, but I particularly asked the witness by reference to paragraph 37 of his proof of evidence that he wasn't dealing with the overall setting of listed buildings as it was covered by others, and I specifically did not ask him questions about it on that basis. And it does seem at the moment that my friend again is trying to lead new evidence about this. But that's the way it appears at this moment, and therefore I do put down a marker, sir. This re-examination has been going on for 30 minutes. There was 60 minutes of evidence in chief. And in my submission, there is, well, let me rephrase this. This should simply not be happening. And it's not fair, and it's prejudicial.
Let's see where the question leads us.
Yeah. Mr. Welsh, if you read at the bottom of page 16 and top of page 17, we see 3 paragraphs which assess setting of the Hamilton building from the Council's perspective. Do we see that?
Yes.
Insofar as you were cross-examined about adverse impacts from the rear elevation, do you recall that?
Yes.
And you accepted there was adverse impacts in the rear elevation, is that correct?
Yes.
Does the Council accept that there were adverse impacts in the rear elevation?
Yes.
Insofar as assessing setting is concerned, has your assessment of the setting of the Hamilton building from a visual and landscape perspective been restricted to considering the southern boundary wall, the Belvedere, the east boundary wall and the north boundary wall?
No, it has considered the entire site, the entire application site and listed buildings on it.
And insofar as the Council identifies significant benefit to the setting of the building and other buildings on Carlton Hill, which results from the eastern development, that's the eastern development, i.e. the school proposals, how do you assess the impact from a visual and landscape perspective of that eastern section of building?
Well, sir, I didn't ask questions about this in cross-examination, and I repeat what I said earlier, that I specifically took the witness to paragraph 37 to avoid getting into these very issues. And my learned friend is simply ignoring the warning shot that I fired, sir, and this simply is unfair. It shouldn't be allowed to continue.
When you're referring to the eastern building, Mr. Innes, are you thinking of the trust scheme?
I'm considering the trust scheme.
And I think we were discussing the visual impacts of the trust scheme's eastern building this morning. I accept what you say about the listed building aspect of it, but you did ask questions of that nature.
Sir, as my recollection is, and I've got my notes here, I certainly asked about the north wall, the south wall, but I deliberately didn't get into the main building. And the east wall as well, I suspect I asked about, but I did not ask about the building. As far as I can recollect it, your recollection counts, sir, mine doesn't.
We were talking about windows of the building sitting above the wall.
Sitting above the wall, that is so, sir. But that was related to a question about the setting of the wall, nothing more.
Mr. Innes.
Well, the fundamental point is if you go into an assessment on setting and narrowly restrict it to the bits that you want to talk about, and then say that's the assessment of setting. I'm trying to put the evidence in context, and I'm asking general open questions of Mr. Welsh in response to specific matters of setting that have been raised by Mr. Steele. And I will go further and look at the design and access statement on this matter, and it directly bears upon it. We are talking about the setting of the Hamilton building, one way or another, and the site. And just because Mr. Steele wants to talk about walls only, he was in the north elevation talking about wider aspects of setting as well. And I think I'm perfectly entitled, if setting's been raised, to go back and ask this witness's view on those matters.
Well, sir, this is just simply being used as an opportunity to lead more evidence. I was very restricted in my questions. That's why the cross-examination was so brief, sir. Having achieved agreements with Mr. Welsh as to what we agreed about and what we disagreed about, I asked about the setting of the Belvedere, the north wall and the south wall, and that was it. I did not ask about the building. And this is simply a fishing expedition to shore up the case.
Bear with us. Yes, I think we tend to agree with Mr. Steele on this. We do understand what you're trying to do, Mr. Innes, and we understand that particular impacts of both or all three proposals need to be balanced in the round. You needn't worry that we will somehow divorce all of that.
It's okay. I think I can get there in another way that's directly related to a question. Could you have the design and access statement open, please, Mr. Welch? If we go back to the new building,
I have that.
and I wanted for you to give your professional opinion on if we were on the playground and walking round the playground on the depiction on the left. We are on the same image. We've got an image of on the left of the new building section that you referred to this morning. Is that right?
Yes. Can I just be quite clear what page we should be on, please?
Well, it's the heading new building that you took Mr. Welch to this morning in cross-examination. And it's the same drawing that you took him to.
Thank you.
I want you to start your journey standing outside the Belvedere Tower. What will I be able to appreciate in terms of setting matters from that location, Mr. Welsh?
From outside the Belvedere Tower, you will be on in the playground, which is one level up in the new building, and there is a large open space which will afford views through the trees to the south to Arthur's Seat. It will afford views to the southwest, the Pentlands, and turning around, it will afford clear views to the Belvedere Tower, the restored Belvedere Tower. It will also allow a partial visibility of the northern wall.
And if you could stand at the same location in respect of either of the appeal sites, but obviously at the ground level beyond, underneath the Belvedere Tower. So we're right outside it, on top of our playground. If you could imagine yourself below and in either of the appeal schemes, what would you be able to see?
If you stepped out of the Belvedere Tower, you would have the 4-storey eastern wing of the hotel approximately 5 or 6 metres in front of you.
And if you join, we'll perhaps do a different journey. We're going to travel southwards. We're going to go, first of all, on the playground and travel in a southerly direction and walk the southern boundary wall with the new railings. And what would I be able to see as I move to the east of the site, west of the site?
You would have visibility over or through the railings which mark the course of the listed wall, and you would be able to walk along the perimeter of the railings with views across them and out to the south.
And as one went to the west of the railings, what one will be able to see?
Do you mean outside the site?
Well, no, we're still on the playground. We're following the southern boundary and travelling westwards just inside the railings.
As you head west, you would pass the classrooms on your right and see the Hamilton building ahead of you, past one of the cupolas.
And if you could do the same journey for the appeal sites, what experience would you have of the site?
You would walk in a circuitous fashion around the perimeter of the eastern wing. There is a path provided for which runs around the perimeter of the hotel building, and you would run alongside the wall and the railings.
And
with the hotel on your right-hand side.
What would you be able to appreciate and understand of the site in carrying out that expedition?
Not a great deal, because the hotel would obscure views into the site until you got to such point that you were past the eastern wing in close proximity to the Hamilton building.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. I have no further questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you both. Now, Mr. Innes, you said you had an issue to raise at completion of that re-examination.
Yep.
Do you want to do that now?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. I'll leave Mr. Welsh in situ.
Well, Mr. Welsh should feel free to move, or otherwise it's entirely up to you.
Sir, there's a matter that's been left hanging, and I'm not sure, obviously having been away, whether it's been resolved, but my understanding is Mr. Gibb has not clarified the issue of the lift overruns that's been left running, and for now it appears over 2 weeks. The matter was raised in evidence, and before I departed over a week and a half ago, I raised the issue again, and we still haven't got any response.
This was the issue of conformity or otherwise with building standards,
yes.
Was it?
The issue was Mr. Gibb was set homework. It's not been handed in, and the question is, what do we do about it? It's an issue that arises in this session of the inquiry, and therefore I would submit that until that matter has been resolved, that the inquiry session should not formally close in respect of session 1, because there's maybe further information which comes to us on that matter. Equally, I think it's got to the stage where you may, sirs, have to give consideration as to whether or not the appropriate method of dealing with it is through a further procedure notice. And it seems to me that the matters that have been raised is what changed in 2017 Ray lift shaft cover, because that was a matter that was specifically raised by Mr. Gibb, and I think it would be important for you to have an understanding. He made reference to building standards, and certainly I've seen references to European standards possibly changing in 2017. The second question that raises is how does that change affect Scheme 1 as it's before you? Is it possible to construct lifts within the buildings as proposed, or are there alterations required to the building to accommodate the lift overruns in accordance with these potential new standards? And that obviously potentially has implications, because if the answer to that is that there have to be additions to the buildings to accommodate the lift overruns, then that would have an implication for the design. It may have results on the overall heights of buildings, and as we've already seen in evidence today, the specific issue of the lift overruns has specific issues relating to the visual impacts arising from a number of viewpoints, and equally would potentially impact upon how the design of the building might be viewed from above. And of course, the final question that would have to be posed, depending on the outcome of that, is whether the appellants were aware of this particular issue prior to embarking upon these appeal proceedings, if indeed there have to be any changes. Now, these are all matters which I would suggest have been outstanding for too long in the context of this inquiry. If it were a simple matter, I am sure the appellants would have clarified it very swiftly, but it is outstanding, and my suggestion is that we now need to find a way of resolving this that ensures that further information is provided, that those other parties are given an opportunity to consider that and evaluate that information and potentially be able to respond with the implications that might follow from it. Given that we don't have a position, I thought it was appropriate to raise this at this stage of the proceedings, given that we're right at the end of this particular session.
Okay, thanks for that, Mr. Innes. Mr. Steele.
Yes, sir. Firstly, let me apologise. I had totally forgotten about it in the midst of all cross-examinations. I will have to find out exactly where we are with that and respond to you as soon as I reasonably can, sir. I do apologise. It simply slipped my mind.
It had slipped my mind too, so don't feel too bad.
It seems to be a matter of great concern to Mr Innes, so we will do our very utmost to allay his fears and concerns.
Okay. As far as Mr Innes's suggestion that we shouldn't formally close session 1 pending further information on that issue, you would be relaxed about that, would you, Mr Steele?
Sir, I'm relaxed about most things except, in fairness, Mr Innes's re-examination, but leaving that to one side, sir, the inquiry is a matter for you. I do wonder whether there might be a very simple explanation to this, but I would like to clarify that first. It may be that we could close the inquiry and simply deal with it subsequently in writing. My impression from when I last spoke about it, which is about 2 weeks ago, is that it's a terribly simple matter. But in fairness, I would need to confirm that.
Okay, thanks for that, Mr Steele. I think... well, first of all, my reaction is that in terms of the Act, we can only consider the plans as placed before us. We can't speculate about other plans that may be submitted for approval in future by others. So my inclination is that we will close session 1 today, but leave open the option, as you've said, of issuing a procedure notice if necessary to give other parties the opportunity to comment. Anything further on that, Mr Innes?
I think the only thing is I will make a clear issue that I raised that as a potential implication for a HESP test.
Okay.
I think the issue is that if a witness is giving evidence and is essentially wants time to consider it, and Mr Gibb was given that opportunity, it is normal practice that that is followed up. if Mr Gibb was never to come back, I would have carried on and mercifully cross-examined him on this particular aspect at a particular time. The fact that I didn't was that I felt it was unfair because Mr Gibb didn't have the regulations in front of him and it wouldn't have been a good use of inquiry time. But clearly there was an issue raised, and I believe that an agreement was reached as to how that would be resolved by the provision of further information. Now, I think Mr Steele's keen to ensure that that happens, and it's just to make sure that we have an adequate opportunity to consider that information and respond if appropriate.
That's fine. That's noted. Mr McIntosh, you also had something to raise.
Yes, sir. I've been following with interest the discussions most mornings about the statement about the long stop, and I'm very conscious that it's not yet been produced. I had the opportunity of speaking to both Mr Steele and Mr Thompson about that this morning. Obviously, where it affects a number of issues, it affects the HEPS test issue, seemingly, and it also affects the deliverability of Rosewood issue, which we might well get into in session 2. And I'm very conscious of the difference between in CD 051, which is the council landowner's statement, as it were, at 7.1 and 7.2, and the way it differs from CD 161, which is the Scheme 2 version of the same document. And so clearly, I'm fascinated to know how the long stop differentiates in terms of how long it goes on for and what it stops. And it strikes me that it is relevant to specify matters 1 and 5 in this, 1 and 5 in this particular inquiry session, 4 and 5 rather, in this inquiry session. And I had wondered whether, I'd hoped it would come today, and we all might want to reflect on it. And I'm wondering whether you might either not close the session, that's one option, or alternatively, if that doesn't attract you, I'm very conscious that I have to produce written submissions by the 12th of November. And that's the deadline in the original pre-examination notice. I'm therefore keen to know how much time I'm going to have to react to this document. And it also strikes me as it might come up in cross-examination of some of the witnesses later this week. So could you issue some form of edict about when it's to be produced by, procedurally? Because I think if we know when it's coming, then we can all plan for it. If it's going to turn up on the 11th of November, I might feel at a great disadvantage. Mm.
Well, you can be certain that if it's coming, everyone will be given sufficient time to comment on it. But perhaps I could hear from Mr Steele and Mr Thompson on this.
Sir, Mr McIntosh has raised 2 issues. 1, the long stop date, and 2, the deliverability of Rosewood. The agreed statement about the long stop date has got nothing whatever to do with the deliverability of Rosewoods. It's a completely separate issue. Insofar as the agreed statement is concerned, my hope is soon, sir. We sent a draft back this morning. The Council sent one back during lunch. We have received it, and we will need to look at it and consider it and take instructions on it. Not all clients are in Edinburgh or in the room. Therefore, I don't guarantee it's going to be done today or indeed tomorrow, but it will be done as soon as it possibly can, sir. It has really no effect on session 2 because we already know what the shortest long stop date is, if I may put it that way, and the longer long stop date, whatever that may or may not be, will be confirmed as soon as we can. So far as the deliverability of Rosewood is concerned, I stress that has got nothing whatever to do with the long stop date and the agreed statement that will be produced in very, very early course.
Thanks for that, Mr Steele. Mr Thompson.
That is indeed the position, sir. I mean, it seems odd that we can't produce this more quickly than we are. The practical difficulty is that both my learned friend and I are depending on instructions which are coming from further afield, and we are certainly doing all we can to produce this as quickly as possible, but we're in the hands of others, I'm afraid.
Mr Mackay.
First, you'll recall it was my submission that requested this information some considerable time ago now, and I would ask that before this statement is presented to you, sirs, if indeed that happens, it's shared with myself and those who are representing the other parties of this inquiry, so they consider what their position might be in relation to that document being produced at this stage of the inquiry.
That seems reasonable to me.
So can I just clarify what's meant by that? Is it now suggested that a document which I think you requested, sir, and which we've agreed to produce, may not be appropriate to go before the inquiry? You know what's just been said?
Just to be clear, sir, obviously the document was requested before the witnesses for HAS gave evidence. It's now proposed, I understand, to produce the document after inquiry session 1. And for that reason, if there are any implications arising out of the timing of the disclosure of the document, it's only fair to the other parties that they've had an opportunity to consider what those implications might be before they make representations to you on that point, sir.
I think that sounds fair, although I wouldn't want that to delay process terribly long, but it's only fair that you're aware of what's coming when it's presented to us. Anything else that we need to discuss today?
Simply to confirm, so that we expect to have all our economic witnesses here ready for tomorrow morning, and the order will, subject to any travel difficulties, be as previously advised.
So for tomorrow, we're intending to have Messrs. Logan, Kett and Jones. Is that right?
That sounds right, sir, but I'd rather have I've forgotten the names, and I'd rather have the document in front of me.
That's what's on the timetable.
Well, if that's what's on the timetable, sir, that must be correct. And we may even conceivably make better progress than that, but it depends entirely on cross-examination.
Indeed.
I will not be delaying matters.
Does that rate of progress sound realistic to those that will be cross-examining?
Fingers crossed. I've already had some discussions with Mr. Innes about our respective areas of interest and, well, with a view to avoiding duplication, as you indicated this morning. So I'm intending not to cover all matters because I now know areas of interest to Mr. Innes, so we're doing our best.
Okay.
So I also had discussions with Mr. Innes about Mr. Logan's evidence, and so again we should avoid duplication. But just for clarity, does that mean that Mr. Finney won't be available tomorrow, or might we squeeze him in at the end if we do very well, just for preparations purposes? That's all.
Mr. Steele, will Mr. Finney be available tomorrow?
As I understand it, all of my witnesses will be here tomorrow and available, subject to travel difficulties, and that would be Mr. Logan, Mr. Kett, Mr. Finney and Mr. Jones, all available, and we would like to get through as many of them as we possibly could, ideally all of them. Mr. Mappin, of course, is giving evidence as well.
Yep. Okay, good.
Just in timetabling, I don't think that is a realistic prospect. I suspect that the first two of the witnesses are likely to take the biggest bulk of the time. So if we only get through those two witnesses tomorrow, I don't think I'd be unduly concerned about completing the evidence on Thursday and possibly having more. It's simply those are the first two witnesses are the ones that I anticipate will get the bulk of the cross-examination. And I think Mr. Logan will be some time. So it's just to give you advance notice of that, and I suspect we will not get through 4 witnesses tomorrow at best. I suspect it may be 2, and on to a third perhaps if we were really going well. But equally, I think the subsequent day is a lot lighter, given that we haven't got methodologies and other things that might always take time.
Okay. Well, we will be relying on all of you that are cross-examining to do the best that you can, and certainly to avoid duplication. Okay. Just a reminder that we need to empty the room tonight, but we've certainly got sufficient time to do that. So subject to what I've said about potentially running further procedure on issues still to come before us, that concludes session 1, and tomorrow we'll be moving on to inquiry session 2. Thanks very much, everyone. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.